Nature has always been a source of inspiration for mankind building things, and helicopters are no different. Maple seeds spinning as they descend through the air, and hummingbirds hovering mid-air, to name a few of these inspirations. Around 400 BC, the Chinese started the idea of vertical flight, and Leonardo da Vinci first sketched an aerial screw in 1483, but it was not published until 300 years later. Not much happens in terms of actual testing until the 1880s, when Thomas Edison experimented with small helicopter models in the United States. His efforts focused on the areas of rotor design and engine research. In 1907, only 4 years after the Wright brothers' first successful flight at Kitty Hawk, Louis and Jacques Breguet and Paul Cornu of France independently constructed and tested rotating wing aircraft that introduced key technical concepts that would enable future autogyros in helicopters. Their machines, however, were incapable of sustained flight. Similar experiments were going on in Russia, but they were also not able to achieve vertical flight. Now, let's talk about autogyros and how they became helicopters. Our story starts in the late 1920s, when the first actual semblances of a helicopter are being created, but without powered blades. Resembling a hybrid between a fixed-wing airplane and a helicopter, autogyro have conventional airplane wings and a tail with a rotor mounted on a vertical shaft above the fuselage. The rotor is not powered by the engine, but turns freely on the shaft due to airflow acting on the blades. The engine creates the horizontal motion of the aircraft, and lift on the wings and rotors generate the vertical motion. Spanish engineer Juan de la Cierva builds a rotating wing aircraft he dubs the CA Autogyro in 1923, but doesn't want to fly it, and it sits for many years without use. In 1928, Harold Pitcairn orders a Cierva C.8W Autogyro, improves it, and flies it, leading to the first flight of a rotating wing aircraft in the U.S. on December 18th of that same year. Then, Amelia Earhart breaks the altitude record in a Pitcairn autogyro, further allowing its popularity to take off. Many years passed, and helicopters started gaining engines to power their rotors. Let's move on to helicopters' commercial and military applications. In 1940, the U.S. Congress signs the Dorsey-Logan Act, authorizing funds to develop rotary wing aircraft for the War Department. Igor Sikorsky flies his VS-300 in 1940. It is the first successful U.S. helicopter and the first to employ a main rotor and tail rotor configuration, commonly used in helicopters today. The Sikorsky R-4 goes into full production and provides the utility of helicopters for rescue and reconnaissance through service in World War II and austere locations like Burma and Alaska. In 1940, Platt Lepage of Eddystone, Pennsylvania, receives a contract to build a helicopter for the U.S. Army Air Corps, but their XR-1 helicopter modeled after the German proves troublesome and the contract is cancelled. Now for the 1950s. The Bell 47 is purchased by the U.S. Army and designated the OH-13. It is used for observation, artillery aiming, and medical evacuation. The turbine engine is first used in a helicopter design by Charles Kaman in Connecticut. The power-to-weight ratio of a turbine was 4 times that of a piston engine and revolutionizes helicopter design and performance thereafter. The Sikorsky H-34 is introduced for utility transport, anti-submarine warfare, search and rescue, and VIP transport. The 1960s were a huge time for the advancements of helicopters in war. The Vietnam War, also known as the Helicopter War, definitely proves the utility of helicopters across a multitude of missions. They were used for troop transport, gunships, search and rescue, medical evacuation, resupply, and command and control. The Vietnam War sees the introduction of the Bell UH-1 Huey, the Bell H-1 Cobra, the Boeing CH-46 Sea Knight, and the Boeing CH-47 Chinook. And the 1970s to now have also seen huge advancements. The 1970s saw the development of the AH-64 Apache and the UH-60 Blackhawk, based on lessons learned from the Vietnam War. Bell and Boeing partnered to build the V-22 Osprey, the world's first production tilt rotor that can take off like a helicopter and fly. The Sikorsky CH-53 Super Stallion is one of the world's largest heavy lift helicopters. The Sikorsky S-92 and Bell Jet Ranger become the standard for commercial helicopter transport. Frank Robinson designs and manufactures the R-22, which has become the most popular training and personal helicopter in the world. Helicopters are doing a lot of good in the world right now. Tens of thousands of helicopters operate worldwide, providing disaster relief, medical evacuation, firefighting, news gathering, police work, construction, presidential and executive transport, dangerous combat operations, and many more uses. So why are helicopters important? Helicopters revolutionized flying technology by allowing for straight vertical takeoff, which made many more places on our Earth accessible for larger scale projects, and certain places that were not accessible at all can now be reached. Thanks for listening to my video. Make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.